If you want to be happy, learning how to forgive is a tremendous blessing. I'll start off by telling you a story, a true story. I actually saw this on television some years ago. This story was about a young woman from New York who went over to South Africa in the time just before the change of government there. And she was there as a volunteer to try to help the people that were struggling to get their freedom. And there was a riot in a town, and a young black man, not realizing who she was or why she was there, in a moment of rage, stabbed her and killed her. And this young man went to prison. Not too long after that, Nelson Mandela was elected the president, and under the influence of Mandela and Desmond Tutu, the government of South Africa did something that, as far as I know, has never been done before anywhere. They instituted a policy of amnesty. And the way this worked is they said anyone, regardless of the crime, can apply for amnesty, which means forgiveness. And there would be a hearing in front of a judge, and the judge had the power to grant amnesty for whatever the crime was. So the parents of this young man who was in prison contacted the parents of the girl that he had killed. They wrote to them here in America. And on this TV program, the mother and father were explaining that when we first heard about this, we didn't want to go. We didn't want to sort of bring up all these horrible memories of our daughter's passing. But we thought about it and we talked about it, and we said she was so committed to this and she lived to do this, and to honor our daughter, we're going to go over there. So the girl's mother and father flew to South Africa, and they met with the parents of this young man. And the parents told them that their son had been a very good boy, and he'd kind of gotten lost in the anger at that time and had made this horrible mistake, and he was full of remorse about it. And they agreed to go to the prison and meet with this young man. And when he learned that the man and woman standing in front of him were the parents of the girl that he had killed, he fell at their feet and he wept. And he told them that every moment of his life he was filled with regret for what he had done. And they were moved by his sincerity. And when the amnesty hearing took place, the mother and father of the girl stood up in the court and asked the judge to grant amnesty to this young man. And this TV episode ended with the father saying something that up until now I can't tell you without choking up, so forgive me. But what the father of the girl said was, we felt that we got our daughter back. Now, most of us don't, most of us don't have opportunities in our lives that are quite as dramatic as that one. What we have are little episodes with family members, with people at work, with people in the neighborhood, where disagreements occur, grievances occur. And sometimes they get kind of magnified over time. I worked with a guy, and this is kind of interesting. His house and the house next to them share a driveway. So you pull into the driveway and you turn left to go into his garage, or you turn right to go into the other guy's garage. And some kind of a disagreement occurred between his kid and the other kid. And then the fathers wound up fighting about it. And what do you think happened? These kids forgot all about it, right? They were playing together the next day. But as far as I know, these two fathers are still not talking to each other. So, you know, one goes this way, one goes that way, they give an angry look, and they go into their houses. People have this tendency to carry their grievances. How many of you, I won't embarrass you, you don't have to hold up your hands. If you've never been angry at another person, hold up your hand. So it happens to all of us, doesn't it, that we have a misunderstanding, we feel that the other person's done something wrong, and we carry it on. And what we do is we think about it over and over again, right? And we review it from our point of view, reaffirming our belief that the other guy is wrong and I'm right. And then we find some friend, some good friend of ours who's going to take our side, and we tell our friend our side of the story, looking for affirmation from our friend that we're right and the other person's wrong. And what do you think the other person is doing while we're doing that? They're talking to their friend, telling their side of the story and getting support from their friend that they're right. And these grievances go on, sometimes for years, sometimes in families until the end of the lifetime. People have these grudges that we carry on. And who do you think is the most affected when we have one of these negative things that we keep thinking about? Who do you think is the most? We are, right? Because we just keep reviewing this thing. Our teacher, Sant Rajinder Singh, asked this interesting question. He said, have you ever been to a really bad movie? And of course everybody chuckled because they could remember some movie they went to that wasn't good at all. And he said, did you go again the next day? Have you ever been to a really bad restaurant? Did you go eat there again the next day? But when we have these unpleasant experiences, we review them again and again and again, and occupy our mind thinking about these grievances, what happened, what we should have said, what we'd like to do to the other person. All of those kinds of thoughts keep going on in our mind. And they really don't serve any productive, useful, or positive purpose in our lives, do they? Instead, they just carry on, this negative thinking. So, every one of us could benefit ourselves, could gain, could get value by learning to let go. How do we do it, though? Is it easy? I think it's difficult for most people. That we fall into those things and we keep reviewing them again and again. Our teacher, Sant Rajinder Singh Ji Maharaj, has a beautiful, simple phrase that he uses that I think if we adopt it would help us all to move toward forgiveness. And that phrase is, he's doing the best that he can. That understanding that somebody might have said something that we don't think was right. Somebody might have done something that didn't fit in with our plans or with our expectations. But if we can remind ourselves that the other person is doing the best that they can, it would help us a lot to not take on those burdens. I had an experience with a friend a few years ago where I felt like she was really pushing my buttons. You know, disagreeing with me about small things and just making things very difficult. And finally, I asked her to come and talk to me, and we sat down in a room, and I said, you know, we've been friends for a long time. And lately I feel like you're really just looking for a chance to argue and disagree, and I hope there's some way we can get past it. And she told me that her husband had been having some very serious health problems, and it had been affecting her mood and her patience, and she realized in the moment that maybe she was talking to me in a way that she didn't want to because something was bothering her. And now that I knew that they were going through this difficult period, I could feel sympathy and compassion, and very quickly, in just a matter of minutes, we were able to get past it, put it behind us. And coincidentally, Babita and I had dinner with that couple last night. You know, we're still very good friends. So just understanding that we don't know what the other person's going through. We don't know what problems they've had, either recently or in their past, that have put them in a frame of mind where they don't know how they're behaving, or they don't know how they're affecting the other. And so if we can accept this idea that he's doing the best that he can, she's doing the best that she can, and accept and show compassion and be patient, usually it helps the other person to respond in a positive way. Recently, we just got back from India a couple of weeks ago, and while we were there, I saw a little video clip where I guess a news person, somebody was interviewing Sant Rajinder Singh, and he was explaining different things. And then this woman asked him, what advice do you have for everybody? You know, what suggestion do you have for all the people? And his answer was, try to see the good in others. And one thing that I found, I've been a student of this spiritual path for 46 years. And what I've found is you can't learn everything in a day. Sometimes you hear something and you kind of knew it, you heard something like it before, but today you're ready. And when you hear that thing on the day that you're ready, it sits in your heart. And when I saw this video and heard Sant Rajinder Singh Ji Maharaj saying, try to see the good in others, it was a real eye-opener for me. That I could think about all the times that I picked up the negative and was critical of somebody else. And what a great thing if we could actually look for the positive. When we meet others, when we interact with others, focus on the things that they're doing that we like, and not on the things that they're doing that we think are not right. You know, this whole concept of taking care of ourselves by not carrying a grudge is a very, very beautiful thing. And I'll tell you from two different religious traditions some very interesting things about forgiveness. In the Jewish religion, we have a holiday called Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. And on the Day of Atonement, we're supposed to ask God to forgive us for the things that we've done wrong during the past year. But also on the Day of Atonement, we're supposed to go to anyone that we can think of that we hurt or wronged during the year and ask them to forgive us. And because the Jewish religion's been around for a long time and people, in the religion have written a lot, there's been a lot written about how to do that and what to do. So along the way, somebody asked a teacher, well, what if I go to somebody and ask them to forgive me and they're still angry and they don't want to forgive me, they're not ready to forgive me? And the teacher gave the answer, you should go back and ask them a second time to forgive you. Maybe they'll open up. And then the person asked, what if I go a second time and ask them to forgive me and they still don't forgive me? And he said, go back and ask them a third time. And then the person said, but what if I ask them 3 times to forgive me and they still won't forgive me? And the answer was, then it's on them. If you've asked 3 times sincerely and with an open heart for forgiveness and the other person's not able to forgive, now it's their problem. Another really interesting story about forgiveness comes from the Buddhist religion. Lord Buddha met someone, and this person believed they had a big grudge with Buddha. Now, it's hard to imagine having a grudge with Buddha, right? But this person sat in front of Lord Buddha, and they went on, venting their anger, making their accusations, telling Buddha all the things that they were angry about. And as you would expect, Lord Buddha sat there very serenely and just let the person go home. And when that person was finally finished, Lord Buddha said, tell me something. If you bring someone a gift and they don't accept the gift, who has the gift? And the guy said, well, I guess if I bring somebody a gift and they don't accept it, it's still with me. And Lord Buddha said, this gift you brought me, I do not accept. There's a tremendous lesson in that. I cannot control what the other person does, right? I was with my son last week, and he said something interesting. He said, my dad told me once, that's me, my dad told me once, you can't change other people, so don't try. And I didn't remember having said that, but I thought, not bad. So we can't change the other person. We can only change ourselves. So somebody else might say something I don't like. They might do something I don't like. Do I have to get upset about it? Who here thinks that if somebody else does something I don't like, I have to get upset about it? Anyone? Well, you're all very smart people. Because what you realize is, it's up to me to keep my peace or give up my peace. The other guy may have anger. The other guy may have things to say that aren't good. The other guy may have a different point of view. But the decision to keep my peace is mine alone. And that's what Lord Buddha was teaching when he said, the gift you brought me, I don't accept. Lord Buddha, being an enlightened being, knew that the other person could be angry, but he could keep his peace. That was his choice. So when things come up in our life that we don't think are the right thing, or that somebody says or does something, we have a decision. It's our decision. Do I give up my peace, or do I keep my peace? Now, we talked already about one method of keeping my peace, which is to try to see the good in the other person, try to understand that they're doing the best they can. But I have to tell you honestly, it's not that easy, is it? You know, sitting here, you're probably thinking, this guy's making some sense. It would be good not to react to what other people do. It would be good not to carry forward negative experiences we have with other people. But most of us will find that difficult to do. Where are we going to find the power, the reservoir of inner strength to be able to forgive, to be able to keep ourselves peaceful among the turmoil of life? Where are we going to find the strength and the love that's going to allow us to set an example of peacefulness and forgiveness? Where is it going to come from? A few miles from here, you've got the biggest mall in America. But I tell you, you cannot buy forgiveness in a mall. We've got libraries, we've got bookstores, we've got Amazon. But you can't find the power to forgive by reading about somebody else and what they've said or done. The only place where we're going to be able to find this strength, this power, this love, is within our own self. We as human beings need to connect to our own higher nature so that we can live a better life than we've been living until now. To understand how to do that, we first have to ask the question, what is it to be a human being? First of all, I think we can all agree, a human being has a body. Right? Everybody here have a body? And we can also agree that a human being has a mind. Now, as Arvind mentioned, I've done talks all over the world, including mainland China. And I was curious, because I always ask people this question. You have a body, you have a mind, is that all? Is that all you have? And everywhere I went, everywhere I go, people say, no, I've got something else. But I knew that in China, the official policy is that there is no God. And the children are brought up to believe that there is no God. And I said, I wonder how they're going to answer this question. So we were in a university in the south of China. I was talking to an audience of 200 Chinese university students. And I asked this question. You have a body, you have a mind, is that all you have? And they all said, we have a soul. So even in a society where there's no religious teaching or training, everybody seems to recognize that we have a soul. It's pretty interesting, isn't it, that everywhere you go, people understand that? And there's words in every language for soul. And we have multiple words in English, right? We say soul, spirit, consciousness. And the second part of the question, if we all have a body and we all have a mind and we all have a soul, which is you? Which is at the core of who you are? What do you guys think? Soul? Let me show you how you can see that that's true. Everybody's read and heard about near-death experience. Many of you, how many of you know somebody, either you've had one or you know someone who's had a near-death experience? See, at this point, most people actually know someone who's had a near-death experience. In the near-death experiences that are described, you know, what got this whole thing started is that the doctor noticed that so many people were describing the same kind of experience. And that's what got all the scientific interest in these near-death experiences. In all these near-death experiences, what's the very first thing that people say happens? What's the very first thing that they experience and report in their near-death experience? Light. Even before they talk about light.
Separation from body.
Separation from body. Everybody says, I saw my body below me. That's the beginning of the near-death experience. If it was on a surgical table, they say, I was hovering above and saw my body on the surgical table. If it was a car accident, they say, I saw my body in the car wreck or on the road. The very first thing that we experience in a near-death experience is, that's not me. That's a body that I used to think was me, but it's not me. I'm separated from the body and I'm still me. So it's easy to see that the body is a temporary place. You know, in all the years that human beings have lived on this earth, everybody's born and everybody has to leave. There's nobody who stays in this physical body. It's like a hotel. You have a reservation, you check in on a certain date, and when the time of your reservation is over, you have to check out. We all have to leave this physical body. But as these near-death experiences illustrate, that's not the end of our existence. Our soul continues. The soul is who we are. There was a French Jesuit philosopher in the 19th century named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who made the following observation. He said, we are not human beings seeking a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings, but we associate so much with the body and the mind that we think this is who we are. And the result is that we're kind of stuck in those lower things, chasing the needs of our physical and mental selves, and for most of us, completely ignoring our spiritual needs. We don't really know we know we've got a soul, we don't know what it looks like, we don't know much about it, and how much time out of our lives do we devote to the needs of our soul? Just about none, right? What do I do all day? I take care of my body. First of all, my body needs to rest 6, 7, 8 hours. So I give it sleep. And when the body gets up, well, I've got to wash it, I've got to dress it, got to feed it, and then I've got to go to work because I need money to keep taking care of my body. To put a roof, to put clothes on it. I get home from work, time to feed it again, right? And after I feed the body again, I've got to clean up, and by the time that's done, I've got a couple of hours left. And I use that time, for most of us, to take care of my mental needs. Entertainment, education, mental stimulation. I read a book, I listen to music, I watch TV, I get on the internet, I talk to somebody. And after I've taken care of my mind for a few hours, my body sends a signal that it's time to rest again. And I repeat the whole cycle every day, all of my life. So my spiritual needs are not being met. Now, here in Minneapolis, and I think you're going to find this very interesting, there is a group of people who are living as spiritual beings. These people never worry about the past. They never worry about the future. They're always happy to meet you, whoever you are. And when you meet one of these people, you are delighted to see them. Now, one of these special people is right in the back of the room wearing a pink dress. See her? The babies of Minneapolis are spiritual beings in touch with their soul. The babies of Minneapolis and Chicago and everywhere are in touch with their own spirituality. When we're babies, we're full of love, we're full of joy. We see everybody else as our friend. And just like this little girl, if somebody brings a baby into the room, everybody smiles. Everybody's happy to meet the baby. Every one of you was a beautiful baby, filled with spirituality and love. And now look at you. What happened? What happened is we went to school and we learned that getting ahead meant developing our mind. And if we did well in our studies, the teachers gave us positive feedback and we went home and our parents were happy. And if we developed our bodies and we were good at sports, then we were popular with our friends, right? So we were learning physical and mental development is what gets rewarded. And another thing we all learned was that it's important to get ahead of other people. And we also learned that what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. And those lessons kept being drilled into us throughout our life until we became the stressed out folks that most of the people in our society have become. We completely lost sight of our own spirituality. Where is it? Is it gone? Did it die from neglect? The best news that I can offer you today, the very best news, is that the spirituality within you is still alive and can be revived when we begin to develop our soul. If somebody hasn't been exercising physically and they start working out, within a short time, they start feeling better. They start feeling more energy, they start feeling more alive. If somebody wants to learn something new, and they practice very hard, day and night, they can learn something new in a relatively short time. For example, if somebody wants to learn a foreign language, they have what they call immersion programs, where you go to the country that speaks that language. You stay with a family, preferably a family with children, who only speak that language. You go to class all day and study the language. You come home at night and the kids are talking away. How long do you think those immersion courses take? Anybody know? 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, you can learn to converse in another language if you pour yourself into it. So physically, we can start feeling better in a few weeks. Mentally, we can learn something new in a few weeks. Of course, you can develop it further, but you can make a lot of progress. And spiritually, when we start to feed our soul and nurture our soul and develop our spirituality, we can reawaken that beauty that we all started out with and start to experience the properties of the soul. Now, Sant Rajinder Singh says that the soul has 6 properties. The first property of the soul is love. And the next property of the soul is that the soul is powerful. Now, most of us don't feel powerful because at the physical and mental level, there's a lot of limitations on us. But at the level of the soul, we are powerful beings. And the third quality of the soul is that the soul has no fear. And the fourth quality of the soul is immortal, lives forever. And the fifth quality of the soul is that the souls are all connected. Nobody's alone. We're all connected to one another at the spiritual level, and we're all connected to that greater consciousness that people refer to as God. And the final quality of the soul is bliss. So, if you made your Christmas gift list and said, I want love, power, fearlessness, immortality, connectedness, and bliss, is that a pretty good list? Wouldn't we like to get that? We had it, we still have it, we just need to reconnect to it. How do we do that? The soul is constantly being pulled away, first of all, by the 5 senses. The 5 senses, sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch, are saying, look here, listen to this, taste this. And our attention is going, what? But even at night, when we close our eyes, lie down in a quiet place, don't smell anything, don't taste anything, don't touch anything, our soul is still not allowed to experience itself because the mind keeps going. Even when we sleep, our mind keeps going. And what is our mind always thinking about? 2 things. The past and the future. Our mind is thinking about what happened. Our mind is thinking about or worrying about what we want to happen next. But we don't live in the past, do we? And we don't live in the future, do we? We live in the present moment. So our thoughts are pulling our soul away from the present moment, into the past, into the future, so that the soul never gets to experience the reality which exists in this present moment. So we've been living lives where our 5 senses and our mind are constantly pulling us around. We need to find some way to give it a break, to give it a stop, so that we can reconnect to the power of our soul. Anybody want to guess what we call that technique? It was right in the title, meditation. The reason we meditate, the reason meditation is so important, is that meditation is how we get to be a spiritual being. How we can disengage from the human experience long enough to recognize our own spirituality. And when our soul starts to get back connection to its own spiritual nature, we begin to take on those 6 qualities of the soul. We begin to find love. we begin to find power. The way this power manifests is when problems occur in our life, when challenges come in our life, we find the strength to smile and get through them. Nobody would suggest if you meditate, you won't have any problems. But I can tell you, and I've been doing it for a long time, when you meditate, you can take your problems. You can transcend your problems. You can be happy in the face of whatever life deals you. And when we begin to develop our spiritual qualities and radiate love, the people around us get a lot of benefit as well. They feel happy to be in the company of somebody who's loving. And the reason, somebody told me recently that the best way to forgive is don't take offense in the first place. So, if we're filled with that love, if we're filled with that power, if we're filled with a sense of who we really are we going to react when somebody says something? We're going to be like Lord Buddha. That gift you gave me, I don't accept. So, the key to forgiveness is the same answer to what's the key to happiness? What's the key to love? What's the key to fearlessness? It's getting in touch with what we came with and have lost sight of. Sant Rajinder Singh Ji Maharaj tells a beautiful story that kind of gets to this point. There was a guy, and he captured a baby eagle when it was newborn. And he built a big cage in his home, right in the living room. And he kept the eagle in the cage. And he fed it, took care of it, but he never let it out. So the eagle grew to full size and always lived in this cage. And he thought it's such a good-looking bird, and my friends can come over and we can sit together and watch the eagle. Some people in the area were disturbed about this. They said, that's a majestic bird. It should be soaring through the sky and free. But this guy never lets it out. But there was nothing they could do about it. Several years went by, and this man decided he was going to move to another part of the world. So his plan was to sell all the contents of his home and the home itself, and then go to the new place and buy a new home and fill it up. So he said, we're going to have a big auction, and we're going to sell all the stuff, and we're going to sell the house to whoever gives the highest bid. And in order to make it like an event so that everybody who lived there, all around there would come, he said, at the end of the day, when everything else is sold, we're going to take the eagle outside and set it free. And everybody was fascinated at the idea that this eagle who had lived his whole life in a cage was going to fly away. So everybody came to this auction. And when they brought out all the beautiful rugs and dishes and jewelry and furnishings, and people saw all the nice things, people were bidding for everything. And he got a very good price for everything. He was very satisfied. And at the end of the day, as he had promised, he had his guys carry the cage out into the courtyard. Now, it was a cloudy day. And the people followed the eagle out into the courtyard and formed a big circle around the eagle. And the man opened the cage, and what do you folks think the eagle did? Nothing. He just sat there. So then the man said, maybe he doesn't realize that this is a door and he can go out. So he carried the eagle out into the courtyard and put it on the ground, and he started saying, come on, you can go, fly. And the eagle just looked around. And it was so sad that some of the soft-hearted people in the crowd started to cry. That this bird could fly away free, but he didn't know who he was. But just then, something amazing happened. The sun broke through the clouds. And when the ray of sunshine struck the eye of the eagle, he looked up, spread his wings, and leapt into the air and flew away. And what's the moral of the story? When the light within strikes our soul, we too will remember that we can fly. And that's the beauty of meditation. That's what it means, is that we can set our soul free. We can be who we were really built and meant to be. We can rise above all the little things that have been holding us back and pulling us down. You might even say forgiveness is just a byproduct of the soul becoming so filled with bliss that it just couldn't imagine wanting to be unhappy with anybody else. This is why spiritual masters like Sant Rajinder Singh Ji Maharaj travel all around the world teaching people how to meditate, so that we can transform ourselves through meditation. And that's why volunteers, and by the way, everybody in our organization is a volunteer. You won't find that in many places. But all the members of Science of Spirituality give their time, give to in whatever way they can, because of one thing only. And everyone here who's part of our group would tell you the same thing. We are so grateful for what we've been given that we can't help wanting to share it with other people. Once you're given this key that unlocks the path to your own soul, and you begin the journey that leads to spiritual fulfillment, you find out that life is very different and much better than you ever thought it was. And meditation is the way that unlocks that, because it's an opportunity to stop all those interruptions and experience the soul. Now, our teacher offers a very, very simple technique to teach people who haven't been meditating about meditation. He calls it Jody Meditation. The word Jyoti means light in the Hindi language. So this is meditation on the inner light. And it's really easy to do. And in the next minute, I'm going to tell you how to do it. And then we're all going to have an opportunity to meditate together. The first thing is, for Jyoti meditation, you have to sit in a very special position called whatever's comfortable for you. You should sit comfortably, back straight. You could be cross-legged. You could sit on the floor if you're comfortable. You can sit on the bench. At home, you can sit in a chair or sofa. And we're going to not use our five senses. So the first thing we're going to want to do is close our eyes. And we're going to meditate in a quiet room, so we're not going to be using our hearing. We won't meditate in a bakery, so we won't be activating our sense of smell or taste. And we won't touch anything. So our five senses are going to be quiet. But what do we do about the mind? If I told you, sit, close your eyes, and don't think anything, how would that go? It's hard. So what we want to do is have a technique to calm our mind and still our mind. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to choose a word that you associate with the divine. It could be the word God, it could be the word Allah, it could be the word Ram, it could be the word Lord. Any word that's a good word for you that you associate with God. And slowly, with your mind, with the tongue of thought, not with your lips or your throat, slowly repeat this word. And use this word in place of all the other thoughts. Now, your mind is not used to this. So here's what happens when we try it the first time. We start repeating, if I had chosen the word God, my mind starts, God, God, God. Yesterday at the office, blah, 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 blah. But you remind it, you bring it back. Remember what we're doing? And the mind says, oh, sorry. And it starts repeating God. And then a moment later it says, I hope tomorrow, God. And use that word just to anchor your mind and teach your mind to be still. And the wonderful thing that you'll see is that once your mind sort of gets into it, it likes it. It finds it peaceful and relaxing. And you can pick up all those other thoughts afterwards. So we meditate with our eyes closed. By the way, we breathe normally, just like we've been breathing all day. And we focus our attention at a point 8 to 10 inches in front of our face. With our eyes closed, and we begin to slowly repeat that word. That's the whole technique. And when we do it, we may find that the darkness begins to become light. We may see flashes of light or circles of light. And when light begins to come before us, just with your attention, gaze into that light. So we'll meditate together here for about 5 minutes. I'll let everybody know when the time is up. And I hope that everyone has a beautiful experience.